Hey you guys, happy hump day. I hope everybody is having a great day today. We are 2 days away from Friday and 3 days away from our boys going to the championship. I'm super excited about that. Today we're going to be doing a lot of coverage on Casey Anthony and the Casey Anthony docu-series. I actually have 3 videos scheduled for today, so all morning I've been trying to get all of that lined up. The first video that we're going to do, we're actually going to go over an interview that Jose Baez did with Megyn Kelley. Now, Jose Baez was Casey Anthony's lead defense attorney, the one who got her acquitted, basically, the one who's um, basically taken the credit or been given the credit of placing, just enough a reasonable doubt in the jury's minds that Casey got off with a crime that nobody thought that she would get away with. Everybody, all America, thought that Casey was guilty. Even the judge has spoke out to say that he thought the prosecution had a great case. Like, he really thought that they were going to come back with a guilty verdict. So the fact that they did not, that has really been attributed to Jose Baez's um, ability to place reasonable doubt in the jurors' minds. So one of Jose Baez's probably most played out clips or one of the things that led him to be able to win this case is in opening statements. So according to like Megyn Kelley and everybody that I've been watching that like covers cases like this, they say opening arguments is where you tell the jury what will be proven throughout the case. Like, we're going to be able to prove this. We're going to be able to prove the case he was abused. We're going to be able to accuse the case he did not kill Kaylee. We're going to be able to prove that Kaylee died in the pool and that George was the one that found her. These are the things that we're going to be able to prove. That's the things that you say in opening statement. And then in your closing argument, you kind of hit on those things. This is what we proved. This is what you have to look at. The funny thing about it is Jose, he made those claims that Kaylee died in the pool, that Casey was not the one responsible, that George was the one that found her. Can somebody get that? Can somebody get the bot in here? It may not be a bot, but it's just someone I think that's going to try to disrupt the stream. So Jose made these claims, and then closing arguments, or at no point throughout the trial did he prove the claims that he said in his opening statement, right? So he represented Casey in this trial. Like I said, nobody thought that she would get away with this. And the thing that he said in opening statement. Now, keep in mind, back when this happened, back in 2008, when everything went on, Casey never came out to say what happened. She never spoke a word to the public, to any investigators. She never told anyone what happened to Kaylee Marie Anthony. So when the trial started, the prosecution, they had their theories, that they thought was supported by their evidence. And their theory was that it could have been, it could have been the pool, but they also talked about chloroform. But they really didn't give any solid evidence to any solid theory that they could prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And I also think that was one thing. That hurt their case is they kind of had a couple of different theories. Maybe it was the pool. Maybe it was chloroform. They brought up the Xanax, Zanny the nanny. So it was kind of all over the place. But Casey never said anything. So when the trial started that day, and Jose Baez came out and said, Kaylee Anthony died on such and such date. And it was like 31 days before she went missing. We're all like, what? This is the first time this has been said. So he is saying, and then we're sitting there listening, she died on this date, and she died in the pool. It was an accident. Then we're all like, what? We've not heard this. I mean, it's been said. Casey was asked about it. Why is she not talking about it? Like, why did she deny it? She was asked about this, and now her attorney, in opening statement, is stating these things. It was an accident. He gives the statistics for how common it is. Each year, this many kids die by accidental drowning. And then he goes into this drawn out story basically about how They were looking for Kelley, and Casey, was running around everywhere, and she ran outside, and there was George with Kelley in his arms. And he says, that famous line, "Look what you did. Your mother will never forgive you. You're going to go to jail for the rest of your life for neglect." And he pinned it on George Anthony. Later on in the opening statements, he says that the lying for Casey started when she was 8 years old, when George Anthony would sneak into her bedroom and sexually abuse her. He said he made a comment along the lines of Casey could be abused by her dad, that night or that morning, and then go to school and act like nothing happened. So she become used. She got used to doing things, going through trauma, and then just going out into the world and acting like nothing even happened. So that was her. So the fact that her daughter could die, she could see her daughter die, see her daughter, her dead daughter's arm, in her dead daughter in her dad's arms, and then go out and party for 31 days, that wasn't out of the ordinary. She would be sexually abused at night and then go to school and act like everything was fine. I personally think that's a huge difference. I don't think that's the same thing, but that's what he kind of, compared it to. So he made all those statements that still to this day stick with us, right? Also, I didn't do this in the beginning, but trigger warning, anytime we talk about Kelley Anthony, this story comes with an automatic trigger warning due to the nature of the story. Obviously, Kelley Anthony, at 5 years old, disappeared from her home, was found dead months later in the ditch, not far from her home. Her mom was accused of being the person responsible for her murder. All of America thought that she murdered her. 3 years later, when it went to trial, she was acquitted. So just a trigger warning, if you guys cannot, if you find this content triggering and you want to set this out, I completely understand. I talk with my hands to begin with. I've actually got a lot of comments lately about I'm trying to show off my nails. I actually talk with my hands. Anybody that goes back to watch any of my videos, I do a lot of, I don't know, it's just who I am. But anyways, so what his story was, what their defense was, is that Kelley drowned in the pool. That she drowned in the pool, that George found her and told Casey, "Look what you done. Your mother will never forgive you. You're going to go to jail for the rest of your life for neglect." Now, I have a few problems with that. Usually when this happens, when an accident happens, the first thing that you do is you call 911. Even if they're blue, you have just a little shred of hope that, your loved one can be saved. So even if they're blue, you can literally, most people will call 911 and take life-saving measures. George was an ex-cop. I'm sure he knew how to do CPR. So you mean to tell me he didn't even try to save her? He didn't call 911. Instead, he decided to, blame his daughter, knowing that an accidental death, you could maybe get in a little bit of trouble, maybe some probation, but covering up a death where then they question if it was murder, you're going to get in a lot more trouble. George Anthony was a police officer at one point. He knew not to do that. That's why I don't think for a second that he did, but that was Jose Baez's story, that it was George. And that's what happened, that she drowned. That was his story. She drowned. Okay? So now, oh, thank you. You didn't come in and say it was shade. But I have had people be shady on my post. I literally told my husband that I was live, and he called anyways. Okay, so one thing that I've been waiting for is I can't wait to hear what Jose Baez is going to say about this. She's literally in the documentary when they say, "Why did you let Jose Baez and your entire team tell that story in your trial? Why was that your defense if it's not even a possibility?" In the documentary, she says it's not a possibility. Not at all. Oh my goodness, come on. Why do you need a freaking code? I'm sorry, guys. She was asked, "Why did you let them say that?" And she said, well, my mom was the first person to float the idea. My mom said it in an interview. She said it at work, to some coworkers, like maybe she thought Kelley may have accidentally drowned. She said it to the police in her interview. I sent it back to you, Sean. It's just slow. Um, she said it in her interview with the police. I think maybe she accidentally drowned. So Jose Baez went with that theory. Unfortunately, rather than blaming Casey for being the one to get rid of the body, he blamed it on George. Casey says in the interview, not possible. There is no way her daughter died in the pool. There's no way her daughter climbed into that pool because the ladder wasn't on the pool. And like I said in a previous video where we talked about this, I don't know how she could be absolutely so positively sure. There's times where I'm pretty sure about things and then come to find out I'm wrong. The other day, I went in the house. I was in a rush to go somewhere, like I am always. I was in a rush to go somewhere. And I thought when I ran out of my office, I had my purse on my shoulder. I thought when I ran in the house to get my shoes on, I thought I set my purse down somewhere. I'm running all over the house. Where's my purse? Where's my purse? And my husband said, did you leave it in your office? And I said, I know I didn't leave it in my office. I remember putting it on my shoulder. He walks out to my office, comes back in with my purse in his hand. I was positive. And I feel like things happen like this throughout our lives where we're pretty sure of something, and then that's not what happened. Like later on, we realize, dang, I was sure about that, but that's not what happened. So I don't see how Casey can be so absolutely positive that it wasn't the pool. The one thing that she keeps saying is the ladder wasn't in the pool. The ladder wasn't in the pool. Well, maybe when George grabbed her out, maybe he grabbed that ladder and slung it out of anger. We don't know. Maybe, we don't know if it was removed later. Did she pay attention? We just don't know, But she was so absolutely certain that she didn't drown. In my opinion, she wants to paint the story. She wanted to get us to a spot where there's no way this was an accident. There's no way that she climbed in the pool herself and accidentally drowned. In my opinion, she says that. She says that it's not a possibility because she wants us to believe that her dad did this on purpose. That her dad purposely killed Kelley in an effort to cover something up. That's why I believe she keeps saying that it's not possible. It's possible. It's possible, okay? But Jose Baez, he responds, that was their defense, that it was an accident and George overreacted, went and hit the body. So we're gonna listen to what Jose Baez has to say about this, you guys. After the docuseries came out, Jose Baez did an interview on the Megyn Kelley show. I've linked the full show in the description box below. We're going to watch about 23 minutes of the show. The show in its entirety is a little bit over an hour long. She talks to Jose about the recent docuseries. They have a little bit of a tit for tat on here because she does not like Casey Anthony. She has always said that Casey Anthony was guilty. At one point in the interview, she says, hey, I'm Catholic. I think that Casey's going to hell. She's going to meet her maker. And that definitely seems to make Jose Baez super uncomfortable. So they go head to head in this interview. But it's over an hour long. She brings up some of his other clients that he's worked with. Recently, he worked with a client, a doctor that was on trial for allegedly killing several patients by giving them too much fentanyl. So also Aaron Hernandez. He represented Aaron Hernandez. And that's a very interesting case as well. If you guys have never checked out the Aaron Hernandez story, check it out. I'd advise you to check it out. But we're going to watch this interview, you guys, that he does with her and hear what he has to say about Casey's new claims that he just kind of ran with a story that her mom put out there, that this was the story her mom put out there and he just picked it up. And when they asked why, like, well, why did you let him lie? And she said, well, he couldn't tell the jury that we didn't know. Like, he just couldn't go out there and say, yeah, we don't know how she died. So, my mom said it, and he used that, So, we're going to watch this, you guys. I am going to stop and commentate on it because I do want to make sure it falls under fair use. It should fall under fair use. I have changed it to where it's no longer the original version. I've made a few little cute changes that you guys will see. But I also am going to stop and commentate just to kind of make sure that it does indeed fall under fair use. All right, let's go, you guys. Let me know if you can hear it, because I want to make sure that you guys can hear what's being said.
Let's talk about this. I know you did not participate in the documentary, and you didn't watch the documentary.
Right. I really, I can't speak intelligently about it. I didn't see it, and I didn't see it where it's in context. And um,
He didn't watch the documentary, so let's go ahead and put that out there. He has not watched the documentary, and he says that, and Megyn Kelly says it, but he already knows some of the things that's been said, and she tells him some of the things that's been said, and she asks him to respond to it.
to me, reality is I don't need to do victory laps on a case I won 11 years ago. My most important case is the next one right in front of me, because in this business, nobody cares what you did in the past, only when they're hiring you in hopes of what you're going to do in the future. So for me, right now, my main focus is what's in front of me, and what I have, the current cases that I have, which are very dear and important to me, and very important to the families of the folks that I represent. So yeah,
So was there? I'm trying to figure out whether there was a falling out, because she says in this documentary that she's very close with several members of her defense team, who she describes as her new family. Obviously, she's not close with the first family, and she lists them by name, and you're not listed. So
That's one thing that I noticed, and I said that when we were covering the docuseries. I want to remove. I'm going to be moving my face around a good bit because I have him popping up at times, her popping up at times. But one thing that she says, so she said, "You didn't watch the documentary. Why not?" He said, "I don't need to do victory laps. I don't need to go around, bragging about what I've done. My focus is the next case, and the only people that care about um, your old cases, obviously, are the people that's looking to hire you. They're looking to see how good you did in the past, obviously, but he sees no need for doing the victory laps, okay? I'm going to back it up just a little bit. Hold on.
Yeah.
So was there? I'm trying to figure out whether there was a falling out, because she says in this documentary that she's very close with several members of her defense team, who she describes as.
Look, he's supposed to smile because in the documentary, he says he didn't watch it, but he does kind of smile when she goes into this. In the documentary, she says, like, she talks about how she has nothing for her biological family, nothing, they're not her family. She says her new family is her defense team, but she names them. And one name that she leaves out is Jose Baez. She names, Elizabeth, she names Dorothy, she names Pat, she names all of them except him, which I thought was really funny. That her lead attorney, she didn't say, that he was like family to her. So that's what she's about to say. That's what she's getting into saying. She said her new family was her defense attorney. She names them off one by one, and you're not listed. Why not? Is there some sort of falling out?
Her new family. Obviously, she's not close with the first family, and she lists them by name, and you're not listed. So was there a falling out?
No, there's no falling out. I mean, it's just been 11 years, and I've moved on with other cases, and I have clients that I represented 3 years ago who I'll hear occasionally from, but we're not friends or family. They are clients who are all very special to me, and very important learning experiences in my life. But it's not something that I hold on to, because I have what I do. You have to be all in or not in at all, and I guess one of those true believers that believes you have to be all in. So I wish nothing but the best for Miss Anthony, and I really hope she finds peace in her life, and all of those other folks who are also involved. But I no, I've got, as you know from even this interview, we've been trying to set this up for 6 months, but my work schedule has gotten in the way forever.
I did add the devil horns. Sorry, you guys.
I was like, every case you take on is in the headlines. These are big cases with big stakes, so I do get it. I mean, it's hard for me to feel as you do, that I wish her the best. I wish her peace. I don't feel. I confess, I don't feel that way. You heard me say it the first time, and I don't. I definitely think she did it, like most of America does, and I know you may disagree, but I really believe, as a Catholic, I believe she's going to go to hell. I believe she will meet her Maker, and she will be held to account for what I believe she did to her own baby. And to listen to her tell these obvious lies, Jose, was somewhat infuriating to me. It was, as a lawyer, as a mother. I'm I get why they did it, why they put it together, but I don't think it was a fair piece at all. It did not include the prosecution's arguments or rebuttals to what she was saying, and it really gave her a pass on the toughest evidence against her.
I agree to that. So he does still practice. He's been super successful. Starting with Casey, after Casey. Casey was very early on in his career. I think he was about 3 years really into it. Kinda. He had done some intern work, I think, but then had to go back and deal with the bar due to like financial troubles. He dropped out of school in ninth grade. He dropped out of school in ninth grade and then decided to be a lawyer and had to go back to school. But yeah, he's basically saying, they're like, Megyn Kelly's like, she didn't name you as a part of the family. And he basically said, I keep it kind of professional. And they all said that in the documentary. All of the defense attorney says, this has never happened. We've covered hundreds of cases. One of them has even covered thousands of cases. And they've never gotten super close to their client like that. I guess she may have been the only client that they've ever had that was left with absolutely nothing and needed to be, what they said, protected because the whole world was coming after her. But there were rumors, and this was rumors, that because she could not pay him, that he took sexual favors. I don't know. But considering the whole defense team is super close to her, Baez stepped back from her after Cheney decided to help her after the trial. I think he realized he needed to stay away from her. I think he realized that he needed to stay away from her too. And just say they did have some sort of sexual relationship. Maybe he broke it off and maybe she broke it off and that's why they went their own ways. But either way, he does kind of say he kind of kept it professional. He's worked other cases, and while they kind of remain on a friendly terms, and he may hear from them from time to time, it's nothing like that. And then we hear Megyn Kelly say, she believes that Casey did it. Casey deserves the death. Casey deserves to go to hell. She thinks she's going to go to hell. He looks super uncomfortable when she's saying that.
Just a big platform to spew what appeared to me.
Oh, and she says something that was a really good case is she says Peacock basically just made her look innocent. They didn't speak on any of the prosecution's key points. They didn't speak on anything that the prosecution had really tying her to this or making it make sense of why she's guilty. None of that was really said. No rebuttals, nothing from the prosecution. It was only people that could really butter her up and basically make her look innocent, And I thought that was a good point to make.
Me to be blatant lies that didn't even comport with your argument at the trial. Like, let's just deal with that first. Deal with the emotion in this case, because I speak for millions of people who hate her, right? So to those people who feel as I just outlined, I feel. What say you?
Well, it's interesting because you and I haven't spoken for years. I think the last time we spoke was back when the case was going on.
Yeah.
So, and I can tell you back then, no one knew what happened. And the evidence in this case is one that we're never going to have all of the answers. And people have a hard time with that. People need finality.
Absolutely.
People need to know certain things.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a big...
especially when it comes to like a dead child. We need to know who in the heck did this. Who in the heck did this?
Problem when it comes to talking about people in their lives and whether they did something or not. Here you are saying you wish she goes to hell.
Well, I think she will.
The reality is, I understand how you feel. There's certainly a lot of folks who agree with you, and there's certainly folks that agree on the other side. So,
not
the one
many.
thing that's certain, and I knew this case back in the day better than anyone, and the one thing that is certain is that we're never going to really know what happened.
That's the thing, is I will have to say, I have a hatred, but I have a hatred. It's hard to separate the fact that he was doing his job. He was doing his job, especially if you watch the trial, because I felt like, I always suspected, like, he's got to know he's lying. He knows he's lying. Like, that can't be the truth. And, we can't really say that we believe Casey because she's a liar too. But according to Casey, she never told him that's her daughter drowned. She said that he grabbed the idea from Cindy Anthony. And if that is the case, just say that's one of the few truths that Casey told. More than likely it's not. But then that would mean that, he did just grab lies to make his client seem innocent. I do believe we all have the right, it's our constitutional right to have a representative. If we're being accused of a crime, you want a representative, absolutely, absolutely. And oftentimes we do aim our disgust towards the people defending the people that are being accused of these crimes. The lines get blurred. The lines get blurred a lot. It sucks, but at the end of the day, he was doing his job. I will have to say, if you're telling the truth, you never have to tell a lie. You know what I'm saying? Like, if Casey would have come outright with him and told him what happened, and she was really innocent like she proclaims to be, no lie would have ever had to be told.
And I can say this much: the evidence was extremely weak when you got past the noise. Now the noise is still there, and that's why
I hear
people
you.
feel the way they do. But once you got past the noise, there was no evidence for us to really understand what actually happened. And that was essentially
You're not wrong about that. You're not wrong about that. That was the prosecution's biggest challenge, was that they couldn't tell the jury exactly how she died. They didn't know. And by the time they found little Kaylee's remains, there was no way of proving it. That she was, the remains were too decomposed. You were not able to determine the specific cause of death. And so that was really a problem, because you're right, juries, Americans and juries in particular, they want to know what happened. They want the prosecution to be able to say, she did it and this is how she did it. And
Exactly. And like I said, they floated a few different theories, like, oh, you know, suffocated from the tape around her mouth, chloroform, pool. They floated a few different theories. And I think that was a big problem with the jury, is like they needed something solid. Like, this is how she died. This is the science to back it up.
and they couldn't. That was a major challenge that you exploited well, that you took proper advantage of.
Well, I don't believe I exploited it. This is our Constitution. This is our system of justice. And we like to judge people in life, and we like to judge them, especially in the media and in the courtroom. And I think what you have to do when you set up a system of justice is it has to be in line with what actually occurred, so that we don't have the flip side of wrongful convictions, which run abundant in our system.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, rather than get on, I'm not trying to get on a white horse of justice here, but the reality is people gripe and complain about and get outraged over Casey Anthony, but you don't see that type of outrage when someone spends 30 years in prison. You hear,
But when it's out there, like, the thing about it is when we find out, when we do hear cases, I know I've read cases about it, but it's not out there as much as this trial. This trial was being shown all across the world, all across I mean, in the States for sure, it was being shown. Unfortunately, the media doesn't cover, and maybe that's what he's saying. The media doesn't cover wrongly convicted people, and I would have to say he's probably right in that. But if they did, I would have outrage as well.
about one story when they get out, and that's the end of it. Nobody cares about them after that. Nobody cares about those responsible for putting them there, and no one goes after those who put them there. And there's hundreds and thousands of cases going on every single day where that occurs. And for that reason, we need these safeguards in place. And if you don't believe in
You're right.
send
You're right. I mean,
guilty man go free before one innocent man goes to prison, well, you will if it ever happens to you or someone you love.
I hear it. I hear you. I always say that criminal defense attorneys are like guns. You may be averse to them until you need one.
Right?
And then you pay anything to have one.
Exactly.
But I do. I don't think she's an innocent person. I think she's one of the rare people who is guilty and managed to just find a great lawyer who got her off. And so good on you, but not good on her. I mean, most of us can see with our own eyes, there's just not the same person in the world who behaved the way she did. If she had gone in, under her story, the day her dad allegedly said, "Oh, here's a wet Kelley who's not moving, and I'm calling 911," and she called and said, "Oh my God, my baby, something happened." No, of course, I would believe her. There was a terrible accident. Maybe it was the dad's, his fault. Maybe it was her fault. Who knows? It was the 31 days after. The fact that she never called 911. She went partying in the nightclubs. She got a Bella Vita tattoo, which she tries to explain away in this documentary as an FU to her family.
Which really doesn't make sense. The Good Life tattoo. Oh, that was aimed at my family. What? I mean, if my daughter got a tattoo saying the Good Life, I'd be like, oh, my daughter thinks I gave her a good life. Like, my daughter has a good life, and I'm going to say that I'm probably the reason behind that, I would definitely not take it as a nephew.
She told police lie after lie when they finally came into her life because her mother called the cops, because she said the car that my daughter had been driving smells like it had a dead body in it. Finally, the cops found Casey Anthony, and she lied. She didn't say George had the baby. She didn't say he's been coaching me for 30 days to keep quiet. She's like, it was Zanny the nanny. Let's go to Universal Studios where I worked. And she had to admit during the middle of this wild goose chase she didn't actually work there. It was just on and on. And Jose, for her to now be like, it was all my trauma. That's literally what she says. It was the result of trauma. No one asked why I lied. That's what she said. I want to get it exactly. I lied, but no one asked why. No one cared why I lied. But I have a voice now, and I am not afraid of my abuser. Why did you lie to police? I was doing what I was told to do by my dad. I mean, do you believe that?
Well, there's a lot of criticisms of Miss Anthony's defense and her position. But if you want to say she's guilty, I would flip it on the other side. I know you along with a lot of folks say, I know she's guilty, but okay, so what did she do? Explain it to me. How did she do it? And
I don't even know. I'm saying the jury's made. I don't even know exactly how she did it. I just know she did it.
I agree. You don't need to know. But so then, how much stock can we put in that? And that's
a
the
lot.
thing.
There's a dead baby. It's not like we never found the body. We found a dead baby with duct tape on her mouth and thrown away like trash in a garbage bag in a wooded area 14 times.
I feel like he gets uncomfortable several times in this interview, and because he knows it doesn't make sense. You know, he knows that it does not any no mother is going to go out partying for 31 days after their baby is missing, or when their rapist is hiding the baby out. I follow this account on Twitter, and it's a pretty good account. They do updates on things like Shanquilla Robinson, Quentin Simon, and stuff like that. And they tweeted last night, or I saw it last night, where he made a tweet and he said, "You know what? Watching this docuseries really got me thinking. Like, maybe it was George. Maybe George was the one to find the body and went and kept the body from Casey, just giving her instructions, telling her to act normal. Like, maybe this makes sense." And most people was like, "Are you kidding me? No, it doesn't make sense." And they're like, she was partying. That's what people were telling him, that she was partying during this time. And his response was, well, my sister's lost two of her kids, and she's went out drinking and clubbing after that. So I commented and I said, the difference is your sister probably knew why her children passed, and she gave them a proper burial and was able to say her goodbyes. Your sister had no question over what happened to her kids, I'm going to imagine. I mean, I don't really know what happened, but I'm going to imagine your sister's kids were not missing. If they passed, she knew why they passed, or she knew for sure that they had in fact passed. Casey claims she didn't know for sure. She didn't know what happened. She still thought that maybe Kaylee was alive, but just being hidden out by the man that raped her. That doesn't make sense. The man that she was trying to get her away from. I took these side jobs to make extra cash so I could try to hurry up and get out of that house to get my daughter away from him. The man that abused me, I didn't want him to do it to her. But then when he takes off with her in the middle of the day one day and will not tell you where she's at, all you could say is, "Dad, when are we going to stop doing this? Like, where is he? Where is he? When are we going to stop doing this? I'm sorry, but if my rapist goes off with one of my kids, it ain't going to happen." You want to know why? Something's going upside his head as he's trying to walk off. That's what's going to happen. Well, I've been super open with you guys about I was raped. I was raped and I was sexually abused by a cousin of mine. I was raped by a different person, sexually abused throughout several years growing up by a cousin. And if either one of those, first off, I wouldn't have my kids around them. I mean, I don't even go to family functions on that side, hardly ever, due to the fact that because he would be there and I would have my kids, and I don't feel comfortable with my kids being there, even in the presence of like all of our other family members, just other family members just super uncomfortable. So I could never imagine letting my baby or my rapist walk off with my child, carrying my child, and then for 31 days just calling and checking in while I'm out at the club. I don't think so. No way, Jose. I like saying "no way, Jose" in reference to this case because his name is Jose Baez. Anyways, let's continue.
How's it away from you?
Sherry, I haven't checked, but I don't think he responded. Did he comment back to me? I don't think he's responded. I'll check though.
Casey Anthony. We know somebody hurt that child.
Yeah, that's a horrible, outrageous thing, but that's not. We're not talking about a murder there. We're talking about some incredibly huge immoral act that someone. And I've never hidden from the fact that I cursed whoever put her there and whoever did that to her, and I think it's disgusting, and I certainly hope that someday we'll.
Sorry, Jose.
Really
Let me just jump in because we're going to hit a hard break, and I don't want to knee, and it secured her acquittal. Aaron Hernandez and.
So she said we're going to hit a hard break. Do those fit the ones that we have?
Man, I thought they were going to.
They don't.
Yeah.
Dang.
Sorry,
She said.
I think I can wire it up.
Okay. She said that we're going to take a hard break, and then I skipped that break. That way we could get back to what they were talking about. Aaron Hernandez, you guys hear her mention that name. That's a really interesting case to follow. I'll talk to you guys more about that towards the end of this video because I want to keep this video based off this.
Many other big names. Let's talk about the opening statement. You heard Vinny mention it, your opening statement. Many believe it's what saved Casey Anthony in that trial. In the opening statement, just so the audience knows, they call it an opening statement and a closing argument. In the closing, you're allowed to argue. You can argue the facts that the jury has heard. In the opening statement, you're only supposed to be stating what the facts will be when you get the witnesses on the stand, what you will prove to them. And what was controversial about your opening statement is you did not wind up proving, you did not submit the evidence that was in this opening statement, but it was in the jurors' heads, and many believe it saved her. So let's talk about that after I play a little bit of it. Here's what you said in SOT 8 about little Kelley and how she likely died.
Kelley Anthony died on June 16, 2008, when she dropped.
Probably going to have to stop and give more commentary on this just to make sure. This is probably really going to get, I don't know, I feel like they're going to be super picky with this, but this is him giving his opening statement.
Found in her family swimming pool. She saw George Anthony holding Kelley in his arms. She immediately grabbed Kelley and began to cry and cry and cry.
Does that look like, I mean, he's hearing this for the first time. I mean, from what we heard, from what I think they even stated in an interview, that they were brought into Jose's office the day before the trial started. And he said, listen, George, you're going to have to take the rap for this. We're going to blame you. And they said, no way. They didn't really tell him how they were going to blame him. Just that, and True Crime Dime, I feel like you know this case really well as well. Am I accurate in saying that they were brought in the day before? Because I read that somewhere, that they were brought in the day before and said, you're going to have to fall on the sword for your daughter. We're going to blame you. And he said, no way. They didn't tell him what they were going to say, just that they were going to blame him. But so this is the first time that he's hearing really, the story basically. And, that's his reaction basically like, what?
And shortly thereafter, George began to yell at her. Look what you've done! Your mother will never forgive you, and you will go to jail for child neglect for the rest of your freaking life.
He was a cop though. He was a cop, so I just feel like he would have known better. He knows the difference between, hiding a body and then getting caught versus an accident, and the punishments for each. One punishment is going to be way worse than the next.
So why did you never introduce any of that evidence at trial?
Because I didn't have to. Our system of justice requires the government to prove your guilt beyond to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. As a defense lawyer, it's your job to point out the reasonable hypothesis of innocence. Everything I said in there, I had a good faith basis based on the evidence and based on what I anticipated the evidence to show. At no time am I required to put Casey on the stand, and at no time was she required to be put on the stand. But there's a lot of things that prosecutors sometimes argue in their cases that they don't get to prove, and they certainly didn't prove a murder. So no one's going back and asking them, why did you say this and this not come out or anything like that. I can tell you, every single word I said in that opening statement, as in with every opening statement that I give in my career, it is based on a good faith basis, based on a lot of what I know that goes around in the background of the evidence. And when I get asked about this case in particular, the very first thing that I tell people is, if Casey told me at any point during that trial, or when it was asked upon her whether she would take the stand, hey, I want to testify, and I tell her, oh, no, you're not, it doesn't matter what I say. She's going to get up there and testify, and it's her constitutional right. So for me to exclude things that I have a good faith basis may come out should either another witness testify to it or she testifies to it, it has to be put out there. Otherwise, I'd be facing malpractice. Imagine all this comes out at the last witness trial.
I think he knew early on that she was not going to take the stand. I think that was something they probably went over beforehand. Thank you, Serena. Where did you send it? Did you send it to my email? But I'm sure he knew before they started, like, are you going to take the stand? If she wouldn't talk to them, I'm sure he had a pretty good idea she wasn't going to take the stand. Right. Why aren't they looking for the killer? I mean, because they think the killer is George.
Well, where did you get your good faith basis?
I mean,
that's I get that, but where'd you get the good faith basis? That she drowned in the pool? That she saw, that the mother, Casey, saw her dad holding little Kelley in his arms? That she immediately grabbed Kelley and began to cry? This is very specific.
And what's crazy is this is very specific. And Casey says she never told Jose any of that. She says, I never told Jose. I never told him anything. He got the drowning story from my mom. I never told him anything. However, she uses the same part of the story. The only difference is She says she ran out. She sees her dad holding Kelley, and he says, "This is your fault." And she changes the story up a little bit. So either you did tell Jose about that, or you didn't, and he somehow managed to guess that that happened. So he's like a psychic, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Because she claims that she never told her defense attorneys anything that happened, except for the fact that she was being abused by, that George had abused her and Lee had abused her. She says she never told them, any details of what happened on that day. She never talked about it. But somehow, what Jose says about coming out the back, running around looking for her, running up on George, he's holding her and says, "It's all your fault. It's all your fault." So that's true. But you didn't tell him. Somehow he just knew that. Okay. To me, it's a lie. He started it. She's holding on to that part, not thinking of the fact that when she tells us, I never told him anything that happened that day. Not thinking that she's actually saying some of the exact stuff that he said did happen. And we are going based off what she's saying in the docuseries. So keep that in mind, because True Crime Dime says she told him, it's in his book. It was towards the end where the story fell apart because the state found out about April and her copying her story. He had to pivot last minute. Thank you.
Immediately grabbed her and began to cry, and that George yelled at her with the following quotes: "Look what you've done. Your mother will never forgive you, and you will go to jail for child neglect for the rest." Where'd you get that from?
Well, you know better to ask me those questions. I mean, there's a thing that I respect incredibly, which is the attorney-client privilege, as well as other evidence in the case. You just finished talking about with Vinnie Politan about potential lawsuits. You think I want to drag myself into that when I've got all these other things going on in my life? I'd rather not even go anywhere near that. But I can tell you this: when I say I have a good faith basis, I am absolutely convinced I had a good faith basis. I stand by that today, as I did 11 years ago, and believe me when I tell you there were numerous facts that came out in that case in evidence that no one ever talks about and no one ever wants to discuss, and I'll just leave it at that.
What do you mean? But finish your sentence. That what? That bolster the drowning theory?
Again, you have to read the transcripts or look at the actual trial. There's tons of stuff in there, and I'd rather not rehash it.
I'm just asking you, what point are you making, though? Like, I'm not going to go back and look at what are you trying to say? If I were to go there, what point would it prove? That she drowned? Or, like, what are you saying is bolstered by a review of the transcripts?
Well, there was evidence testified to by our forensic experts as to the potential drowning theory. There was, in addition to that, there was cross-examination that the jury can make their interpretations based on. They're free to believe a witness or not believe a witness based on those questions. And I can tell you this: a lot of the feedback that we got from the jury is they believe certain parts of the evidence. There were statements made at numerous points throughout the trial that raised serious concern about the drowning in the pool. And when I say concern, I mean raised the issue that was certainly a potential aspect. And it's the prosecutor's job to exclude that reasonable hypothesis.
That's true. That's true.
So, they knew about the drowning theory since day one.
Well, of course. They even asked Casey, is it possible? She said no, but she was also lying to them about everything. So they also knew that it could be a possibility. You have a baby that comes up missing. She has a pool in her backyard. The mom's, partying afterwards. The mom clearly knows what happened to her baby, and that's why she's not walking around wondering, what happened to my baby? Where's my baby? She's partying. She had no concern over where Kelley was because she knew where Kelley was.
But she had been telling cops it wasn't true.
To exclude that.
I get that, but Casey had told the police that didn't happen. She said that at the time, and to the documentary filmmaker's credit, she actually does include that in this piece. There's an interview with a law enforcement officer saying Casey was adamant that the child did not drown in the pool, and sure enough, Casey today is adamant that the baby did not drown in the pool. She's, you may have heard me play for Vinny, but she's like, there's lots of possible theories. That's not one of them. Just to reiterate, and I'm going to play it again, but she says, lots of scenarios of what could happen. Her drowning in the pool is not one. It is not possible. In most scenarios, it'd be plausible. Not this one. The ladder was not on the pool. It's the only...
Y'all see that? Y'all see what Jose just did? Let me get big. When she's reading what Casey said, and Casey said it's not possible, he smirks and he goes, So we're gonna watch that again. I'm gonna roll it back just a little bit. Nobody was ever found guilty of little Kaylee's murder. Nobody has went to jail for it. George has never been charged or convicted of anything in relation with this case. Let's roll it back just a little bit.
Happened. Her drowning in the pool is not one. It is not possible. In most scenarios, it'd be plausible. Not this one. The ladder was not on the pool. It's the only way in or out for her or for me.
Well, you're not going to pin me against my former client's statements. I have nothing to say about that. That's not the case that I'm currently handling, so I'm not going to comment on that. But I can tell you this: if I had a nickel for every lie that was spoken in that case, I'd have been able to retire right after. And
For sure.
I'm not referring to the lies that have to do with Miss Anthony. There were lies throughout that case from multiple witnesses and multiple people on the side who had knowledge and information but chose to say other things. So having said that, that's really not foreign when it comes to criminal cases, because people have their specific agendas and interests. So you have to look at a case in its entirety and the entire complexity of the case. So
Look,
again,
your best argument on that front is the fact that the jury found for you. No one's going to dispute that. Your best argument is that the jury did that and found in your favor. Now, some of them have expressed regrets after the fact and said they regret.
I imagine why. I wonder why, with all of the media backlash that they faced and the personal attacks and threats. I don't buy into that. I mean, they made the decision. They didn't know Casey. They're not friends of Casey. They had every reason in the world, given what they were exposed to prior to the trial, to convict her. So to come back and say that later on after the fact, it's ridiculous. And I'm not referring to the jury. I understand the reasoning behind it, especially after the public backlash. But to post that up as if it means something, it really doesn't in my book. Mm-hmm. If someone wants to play stock in that, you're free to do so.
So let me ask you, because I had Marsha Clark on this show recently.
I love Marsha Clark.
You're aware that she's made allegations about what was on.
Let me just say I love Marsha Clark, okay?
The computer, and you made allegations about what was on the computer in your book, and then she took up those allegations and did a deeper dive. And the long and the short of it, correct me if I'm misstating what happened here, but you wrote in your book that one of the search engines that was on the family computer showed a search the day that Kelley went missing or died for foolproof suffocation, and that you posited in the book that time of day was 1:50, and that George was the only one home at the house at that time. George was the only one who could have done that search, foolproof suffocation. I think your position was he may have been looking to kill himself out of guilt over having hurt Kelley. Then she did a piece on a special she did on A&E saying there was a glitch in the software and your timing was off. It wasn't 1:50, it was 2:50. And George was at work by 3 p.m. that day. And then there is a reporter included in this documentary who says, we went and we subpoenaed, because Florida's really open with all of its evidence in these criminal trials. We subpoenaed her cell phone records, and we could show that Casey Anthony was at home pretty much all day. She did not leave early in the day. She was 100% there at 3 p.m. and beyond. And we can prove it because her cell phone was there. So she was at home when that search was done. George was at work within 9 minutes of that search being done. And the evidence suggests that it was Casey Anthony who searched foolproof suffocation, not George.
And Casey in the documentary, when they tell her that, when they're like, so there was a search done at 2:50 for foolproof suffocation under your username and password on the computer, and your dad clocked in at work at 3 o'clock, they're like, what do you say about that? She's like, well, we lived less than 10 minutes away from my dad's job at that time. So you mean to tell me at 2:50, he sits down on the computer, looks it up, but he doesn't take time to read it? No way that he can, because he has to get up, go grab his keys, stick his wallet in his pocket, get out to the car, get in the car, shut the door, drive out of the driveway, drive the 9 minutes to his office or to his work, get out, walk into the building, go into the building, however long it takes, clock in, all in a matter of 9 minutes. Obviously, if somebody looks something up, they're going to sit there long enough to read what it says. It's going to take at least a couple of minutes. You know what I'm saying? So she literally tries to say that he had time to do it. Not possible. It's really not possible.
George.
As soon as he looked it up, as soon as he left, Casey looked it up. Right.
Anthony, how do you respond to that?
I don't need.
And her MySpace account was accessed a minute after that search, and her AOL messages. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that, but I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Me too. Again, you're asking me about something that occurred 11 years ago, specific pieces of evidence that occurred 11 years ago.
Well, I saw you issued a response to Marcia Clark.
You know what? That makes a lot of sense. She says in the docuseries, we all had each other's password. It was a family computer. Like they had my password, I had theirs. True Crime Dime says, Elle, I have videos of her in jailhouse calls of her brother and parents asking her for her login and password, and she lies to them about what the password was. They never had her passwords like she claimed. And the thing about it is I wouldn't assume that they did have her passwords. She was lying about where she was working. She was, hanging out with friends, bringing her daughter around her friends. I don't think she would risk her mom signing into her MySpace account and seeing a conversation in messages between her and one of her friends, or maybe her and one of the guys that she was talking to, and catching her in some sort of lie. So I don't believe for a second. True Crime Dime, can you send that to me? I want to get that and just kind of, bounce that off the video. Maybe do a video on that. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just saying, you recently commented on this.
Well, no, I didn't. Let me clarify what I'm willing to comment and as far as I'm willing to go. I'm aware of what reporters had in their possession. I had the only mirror-screened copy of the hard drive along with law enforcement. Law enforcement never made that claim. Neither did I. I was certain based on the evidence that I had from my experts, not a blogger, which the media used. Both Tony Pipitone, who was the reporter, and Marcia Clark utilized the same person who dabbled in computers, wasn't a real forensic expert, but yet it's being tainted. It's being painted out in the world as if it has some real credibility. I lived this case 11 years ago, and I can tell you we did an incredibly thorough job. We did, in fact, just as thorough a job as law enforcement did, if not better. And I had that evidence ready to go and ready because I believed it favored Casey. And that is, let me finish. That is just one of many things that we had in our possession that we were willing and able to use should we have decided to use it. But you got to understand, and when you defend a criminal case, you don't have to prove anything. It's the other way around. It's not really an adversarial system the way it's painted out. So given that, I didn't feel I needed to. So. And that's the same thing with all of my cases. If I have evidence that
Jose, nobody's asking you why you didn't raise this at trial. That's not what I asked you. I said, how do you respond?
Your question, which was essentially.
Well, no. First you said no because I don't remember what happened all this time later, and then I pointed out that you actually did. You raised it in your book, Marcia.
They're about to really get into it. Y'all listen to this.
Clark called you out, and then you felt the need to respond to her, and I'm just asking you if you'd like to respond here since I had her on the show saying similar things. And your response is, it's not an adversarial system. It wasn't my obligation to submit this evidence. That's a dodge. That's a dodge. I'm asking you to respond to.
I'll be as clear as possible. Marcia Clark doesn't know what she's talking about. She wasn't involved in the case. She didn't have the hard drive. She didn't utilize a real expert. She utilized a blogger, and I questioned the credibility of what was actually laid out there based on what I had, and given all of the evidence, this is my opinion of what this evidence shows, and I believe theirs was incorrect, and I had the only copy, and it's that simple. I mean, I had the legitimate copy that followed the chain of custody. What occurs after something loses its chain of custody can be highly manipulated when it comes to evidence, and I don't ever believe any of it if it falls outside of the chain of custody. So having said all of that, my plain answer to that is that one, it was 11 years ago, so the specifics of which I don't choose to get into, but two, and most importantly, I had the only piece of evidence, along with law enforcement, that followed the chain of custody, that I can say this evidence was potentially not tainted at the time, and I put more credibility in that than I do what a blogger did with some of the other potential version that I have no idea about. So
okay,
that's it. And I'll tell you.
I got it. Let's move on. We spent enough time on this.
All right, let me just tack on this.
Jose, it's dragging. I get it. Let's move on. I want to get to your other cases. I know you'd like to discuss them.
No, you're criticizing me. And
I said dragging.
I should have
dragging, not dragging. Trust me, as the anchor, I know when the discussion has run out of energy, and we're there.
I can't help it. You don't like the answers I'm giving you. I mean, I'm really sorry for that. I know you wanted to.
Listen, you're dodging, and I'm pinning you down, and you're repeating your points, which does not help you. It undermines you. I'm ready to move on.
So she says, like, let's move on. You're dodging the question. You're not answering the question. You're dodging. You're kind of working your way around it. So let's just move on. And he's like, I'm not dodging. But she's like, yeah, you're dodging. And she says, I'm pinning you down. You can't answer the question.
What else would you like to add that's going to bolster your point?
Go ahead.
Yes, trust me. This is a dead cat. Let's move on. I want to ask you if you believe her claim now that all the lying she told, all the lying she did was as a result of trauma, that she declined to say to the police, George did it. My father hurt my baby. He killed my baby because she'd been sexually abused. And that the entire time she was partying for those 31 days, she had no idea the baby was dead. And that she was being told, as she's now claiming, by her father, just to keep quiet. Keep quiet. Kaylee's alive. Trust me, trust me, trust me. Do you believe that? This doesn't require you to reveal attorney-client privilege information. It's just a question about whether you believe that claim.
Well, I think it's an improper question to ask me. Number one, it's not my job to judge clients. It's something I never do because that's not what I would want from my lawyer should I hire one. So why would I be the type of lawyer that would go up and make judgment calls after a case is over? I love the practice of law. I think it's incredibly important. It's one of the most honorable professions available to anyone to undertake. But one of the main things that you do not do, and I even try to practice this as a person, is not be so judgmental of people. And, we're all better than our worst mistakes. And I think that there's a certain human dignity that each and every person has.
Is he saying, he said we're all better than our worst mistakes? Is he saying my worst mistake was taking on Casey Anthony? Or is he saying, her worst mistake was that maybe she killed her kid, but she's better than that? Or maybe, my worst mistake was taking on Casey Anthony, but I'm better than that.
And I really try to live my life in a way that I try my best day in and day out, not to pass judgment on others. It's something I wish a lot more people employed, but for some reason they don't. That's on them. So
I don't disagree with that when it comes to a moral failing, a genuine mistake. When it comes to murdering your 3-year-old, I feel differently. I'm going to judge.
Well,
we're all going to
again,
judge
you're assuming
appropriately
that she murdered someone. There were 12 very important people who heard
It's not an assumption.
that you didn't, that felt otherwise.
No, I did. I actually heard. I watched the case and I
You were
followed
in
the
the
case
courtroom.
very closely.
There's a lot that happens in a courtroom that you don't see on TV. In fact, it's a big aspect.
That's true, but I also practiced law for 10 years and I understand how lawyers manipulate juries. And I'm not saying you did anything wrong, but
are you saying you
were very
juries
skilled
when you were a lawyer? I didn't hear that.
I'm saying I know it when I see it. No, I was a very talented trial lawyer and appellate lawyer, and I won most of my cases. And I saw how you won this case. And I'm not saying there was anything untoward about. Hold on, Jose. Hold on. I'm not saying there was anything untoward about the way you handled the case. I'm saying I didn't believe you for 1 second, and I don't believe your client. And my legal practice has led me and most other attorneys and citizens in this country to think that she got off because of your skill, not because she's innocent, which is the word she uses to describe herself now, that I was proven innocent, which is bullshit. That's not what happened at all.
Well, I disagree with you. I think you are certainly a very judgmental person, and you're free to be that way.
Yes, when it comes to murdering 3-year-olds, I am.
Well, you're limiting it to that, but I'm sure you judge every day in a lot of the things you say as it relates to your profession, and that's your job to do what you do. So I'm not going to sit there and attack you on that, but I'm not familiar with your work in the court.
She'd be like, I judge, you lie. I judge, you lie. I judge, you lie. You lied and got off a killer. A child killer, no less. How do you feel? What's worse?
Courtroom, so I really can't comment on that or place any real stock into it. But having said that, I can tell you this. Every single thing that we did in that trial and everything that we do in every subsequent trial is held up to the highest ethical standards that I ensure that my entire team follows. So
no one is suggesting
I really
otherwise.
don't know what else to say.
You're defending a claim that hasn't been made about you, which says something. I'll have to think about it.
I don't think it says anything. I think you're just reading into it as much as you can. But hey,
I'll let my audience decide.
He's like, I did what I was supposed to do. I was ethical. I was moral. I did what I was supposed to do. Me and my whole team did what we were supposed to do. And she said, nobody ever said that you didn't. You're making a claim that, I got to figure out the reason why. I'm going to figure out the reason why. Like, I need to think about that. He's like, no, that's not what's happening here.
Let's talk.
So that's it, you guys. That is, now, this video in its entirety is like an hour and 39 minutes long. But that is the one interview where she talks about Casey Anthony. She talks about some of his other cases as well, Aaron Hernandez. She talks about the doctor that he recently got off. The doctor was acquitted. I think Aaron Hernandez, they won his case, but then Aaron killed more people and got arrested again. And then Aaron was, he committed suicide in jail, in prison. So I want to hear Nancy Grace on her documentary. She has to have something to say about it. Oh yeah, I think she has spoke about it. I need to go listen to that, and then we can talk about that. But yeah, basically, he says, you know, I the reason I spoke about that, the reason I said Kaylee drowned is because I had a good faith based reason. Like I had a solid source almost telling me that I trusted. And I'm like, I don't know how you could trust Casey because she lied about everything else. You know what I'm saying? While Casey is telling us in the documentary, I never told them what happened to Kaylee. I never spoke about that date. All I told them is that I was sexually abused. I never spoke about that date, but do we really believe her? Or do we believe that she did kind of feed him, information that she thought would make it make sense? Like, as far as the police, do you think she drowned? No, not at all. Jose Baez, when they're like, listen, it's getting down to the nitty gritty, we got to come up with a solid defense. We're going to go with she drowned. Okay, and, all right, but why didn't I call 911? Well, we could say your dad. Do you think, think back in your brain, we think she probably drowned, right? Yeah, actually, I think that's probably what happened. And the thing about it is you didn't find her, or you would have called 911. Your dad found her. Yeah, yep, that's what my memory's telling me. And your dad, he was mad. Said your mom was gonna blame you. Y'all freaked out. He took, you know what I'm saying? Did he feed this to her? Did she feed it to him? He claims that this. He doesn't really speak on it. He uses the, attorney-client privilege. I can't talk about that a good bit. But he does tell us that he got it from somewhere. He defends his practice. He defends what he does. I don't just make up things. Like I'm very ethical. I'm very moral. Like I don't judge. And she's like, you're defending claims that nobody's made against you. Makes me wonder why. What do you have to prove? I got to figure that one out. Why are you defending claims nobody's made about you? And he's like, no, that's not what I'm doing. You're looking too far into this. So it got a little heated in their interview. It was an interesting interview, but still he told us nothing more, really. I mean, if I got someone off the hook who was facing the death penalty, and then years down the road, she basically called me a liar for all the world to see, I don't know. I guess as an attorney, he can't come out there and say, yes, I lied for her. I needed to get her off the hook. I lied for her. Guess he really can't come out and say that because that would ruin him. But still, I was hoping that he would say something. Yeah, he's playing it safe. He can't really say that he lied for her. Saying that he had a good faith-based source basically that gave him this information is the best that he could really come up with. Attorney-client privilege. I can't tell you anything, but I can tell you that I had a reason. I had a good reason to suspect that this is what happened. But yeah, Megan was fire. She was on fire. She wasn't biting no bones. She was, asking all the questions I would probably say. Oh, didn't Casey speak about him? Yes, she did speak about him in the docuseries. She said that the defense that he used in the trial, that he lied, that she never told him that Kaylee drowned, that he got that theory from her mother. But I thought it was super interesting, you guys. Jose says I don't have to do victory laps. And I'm trying to think if he did any interviews after that. If he went around doing any victory laps after that. Does anybody remember? I don't remember. But I thought it was definitely interesting to hear him speak out on it. I was hoping that he would say a little bit more, but I understand why he can't. He can't say that he lied. He can't say, yeah, no, she didn't tell me that. And he can't even say, I don't think he can even say, yeah, she did tell me that. Yeah, Casey put him in a really bad position. But do they have to release that information to the judge? Is my question. Are the attorneys allowed to keep those things to themselves? Anything that is said between your attorney and yourself, the client and their attorney, is covered under the Attorney-Client Privilege Act. So you don't have, Law Act. I mean, no, I don't think so. The good faith reason was Lee. He came to them at the end of the trial and said the stuff about the dog being buried and other things. Yeah, he did do that. I do remember that. I do remember them saying that they spoke to Lee and they're like, listen, she's facing the death penalty, And he's like, all right, well, this is what I can say. This is what I know. see. I'm going to check those messages that you guys said that you sent me. Got these wrong. Behind wrong. There it is. All right, let's see. I'm gonna Serena, can I read this really quickly? The documents that you just sent me, and then true crime. I might play that, or I might do a video on its own comparing what she said there versus what she said, in the docuseries. So I think that'll be a video on its own. But I want to read this. This is an affidavit of Dominic Casey. It says, my name is Dominic Casey. I'm over the age of 18. I'm competent to testify to the matters contained herein. I make this affidavit on my own personal knowledge. In July 2008, I was a detective hired by the Baez law firm to work with the defense team for Casey Anthony, who had been accused of killing her daughter, Kelley Marie Anthony. Within 2 weeks, something written over that. Within 2 weeks that he was hired by the Baez law firm, I think that's what it says. Within 2 weeks of Casey Anthony's July 16, 2008 arrest, Jose Baez retained my agency DNA investigations. Okay. In July 2008, I was a detective. Wait, we already read that one. Okay. Saturday, July 26, 2008, Baez had told me that Casey had murdered Kelley and dumped the body somewhere, and he needed all the help he could to find the body before anyone else did. Shortly after being retained for the defense, I met Casey Anthony at the jail. There was no doubt she had psychological issues. What they were had yet to be professionally diagnosed. Jose Baez refused to have her evaluated by a psychological professional. I'm skipping around here. That's because that was 5. One of Casey's high school friends, Kyle Marie Cruz, lived on the same street as Casey. She had also called the sheriff's department and informed them that Casey, Jessica, and she, Kyle Marie, had used Suburban Drive as a teenage hangout because this was a familiar place. Kyle Marie said that Casey may have buried Kelley there. That night, news reported that Kyle Marie and a deputy sheriff drove around the neighborhood and along Suburban Drive. August 12, 2008, the state attorney offered limited immunity for Casey in exchange for information regarding Kelley. Casey wanted to accept the plea deal. Baez told her to wait until he returned from New York and he would be able to bond her out of jail. On August 14, 2008, while Baez was in New York, Casey wrote a letter to the sheriff asking if he could set up a meeting with her father, George Anthony. She wanted George to help her work out a plea. Hold on. There's something typed over the wording, so I'm having a hard time making that out. She wanted George to help her work out a plea while Baez was in New York and say that there was it's cut off. Where's the rest of that affidavit? That's interesting. Do you have the rest of that affidavit, Serena? That's pretty interesting. So that is a detective that was hired by a Baez law firm. This is an affidavit. So, when you file an affidavit, you are stating that it is true. So he says that Jose told him that Casey admitted to killing Kelley and dumping the body. And if she told him that, though, I wonder why she didn't tell him where the body was. Because I would express, well, we need to find that damn body, Like, hello? The body needs to be found. shouldn't have said that in reference to Kelley. Now I feel bad that I said it that way. But just in terms of thinking, if your client tells you she killed someone and she dumped the body, but she won't tell you where the body is, why not? I'll go look for that. Thank you so much. Um, that's pretty interesting to say the least. I haven't read that. The body was moved a lot. Yeah, that's what I've heard that. It's funny they rely so much on her mental state and everything being from trauma, but at the time they refused to let her be evaluated because it would not help their case. Yeah. Mike Hunt, um, are you saying the family knows this? So like George and Cindy Anthony know that? Yes, definitely going to be praying for. We have a few members that's actually sick, not feeling well. Definitely going to be praying for them. She did tell him, but they couldn't find it apparently. He went out looking for it. Oh, wow. And what they're going to do now, they can't charge her for the same crime twice. That would be double jeopardy. So she basically walks. Yep, everyone knows she's guilty. Disgust me. Exactly. Exactly, you guys. So that was interesting. If Jose Baez does any more interviews, we'll go over them as well. The body was definitely tampered with, so the mother was screwing the lawyer. I don't know. There's rumors that Casey and Jose had something going on. I don't really know if there's any validity to that. Basically because she had no money to pay him. So I think that's just what people came up with. She was young. He was a fairly new attorney. This was his first like big case really. So I don't know, you guys. She truly didn't love that little girl. If she did, she would have been a better mother and not murdered her or lied to cover it up. It makes me so mad. Yeah, I agree. While in the court of law, she's been found innocent of killing her child. She's been found guilty of being a liar, but in the court of law, she was found innocent. So I do have to say, anything that I state in any of my videos in relation to Casey Anthony and her role in the disappearance, the death of her daughter, when I say I think she did it or I say she's a murderer, that is all my opinion. It is not stated as facts clearly because if you want to, to be technical, I guess you could say the fact will remain that she's innocent in the court of law. So we're going to go ahead and close this video out. First, Kelley died in the car, moved to the trunk, was in the backyard and play set behind shed for a bit. Cadaver dogs hit 3 times, then different plants around her skull were not native to that area she was found in. I do remember that. I think the reason I'm saying she was 5 is because she was born in 2005. That's got to be why I'm saying that. She was 3. Yeah, she was almost 3 because she was born in 2005. This happened in 2008. My daughter was born in 2005 too, so they were the same age when this happened. Leilani should call Casey's legal team. Yeah. She was out in the woods somewhere. Then July 1st moved to the final resting place based on plant growth. 2 weeks old. Wow. It's devastating. Devastating. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close this video out, but I'm coming right back, you guys, with another video where Ben Chew tells us if George Anthony has a solid defamation case. Because the claims that Anthony put out, the claims that Casey Anthony put out in this documentary, she says she was sexually abused by her dad. She claims that her dad is the reason that, that he hid Kelley, that he put her in the bags and put her in the laundry bag and the garbage bag and, threw her body out in the ditch, that he was behind all of this. So everybody's wondering, could he sue her? Is he going to sue her? Word on the streets is, and I don't know this, I'm just seeing, this put out there by people claiming to know the family, that he has spoken with an attorney about possibly suing Casey for defamation. So Vinnie Paulton from Court TV had Ben Chew on his segment, or had him on his show. Ben Chew was on Court TV, basically explaining if he thinks George Anthony has a good case. Ben Chew is the lead investigator that won the Johnny Depp case. So Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. You guys know the case. It was all over the TVs. We followed it. He was the lead investigator. I really like Ben Chew. Like, I love how they're like sitting there eating them candies. Johnny Depp's coloring little pictures and he's sliding them over to Ben Chew, and Ben Chew's giving him the nod of, Yeah, that's great. I love it. And then after they won the case, Ben Chew is going out to Johnny Depp shows dressed in leather and rhinestones, and it's really cool. He's just a very supportive friend to Johnny Depp, and obviously they want a spectacular defense team. Wait, were they the defense of prosecution? Were they the defense team? Either way, great team, great legal team. We're gonna do another video where we listen to what Ben Chew says in regards to like if George Anthony should sue Casey Anthony, if he would win, if he thinks he has a good case. So all 257 of you guys, follow me back here in just a little bit as we go over that. That's going to be about 20 minutes. I'll set it out. So you guys follow me back here. Leave me your thoughts in the comment section below. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. I'm hoping, where are we at right now? I had a goal set, but I may have already hit that goal that I had set a couple weeks ago for the channel. Where are we at? We're at 71,000. Yeah, I think my goal was 70,000. We're at 71,000, 71,900 subscribers. Let's see if we can get to 75,000, before the end of the year. High hopes. Let's see. You guys hit the thumbs up button. Leave me your thoughts. Join me back here in about 20 minutes as we listen to Ben Chew. Also, we're going to go over what the judge that was over the trial has to say about this new docuseries. We're going to go over that one too. So hit that. Make sure you have your notification bell on so you are notified of when I go live. Also, all my members, make sure you guys are in the Discord because I always post in there. I always post on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, in the Discord before I go live. So follow me on those other social media platforms. Get into the Discord if you're a member. I'll see you guys in a little bit. Bye, everyone.